Hello, everyone, and welcome to Facts Supporting Life. My name is Ingrid, and thank you very much for joining me today. I am continuing on the subject of sin. This is where I'm sharing with you my comprehensive revelation of sin. And I'm now on my 7th video, which is on the third topic, sin that was removed versus sin that needs to be forgiven. Now, there are two parts to this particular topic, and I've already started with the first part of it, where I was addressing these three questions. What sin was removed? How did Christ remove that sin on the cross? And why did he remove that sin on the cross? Now, on the previous video, I was addressing the first question there on what sin was removed. And this is where I ended on Romans 6:16, which reads, "Know ye not that to whom you yield yourselves as servants to obey, his servants you are to whom you obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness." I'll go ahead and put a link of that video on the description below for easy access. But to move on to the second question there on how did Christ remove that sin on the cross, I'll start here on 1 Corinthians 15 verse 4, which reads, "And so it is written, the first man Adam became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit." There are two types of Adams. The first one, of course, being the one in the Garden of Eden who yielded himself as a servant to obey to the serpent, and therefore subjecting all of us mankind to the sin that made an entrance into our world. The last Adam came to be a substitute of the first man Adam, because the first man Adam was subject to the sin. So the last Adam came to take away that power that gives authority to that sin that made an entrance into our world. In that way, the first man Adam is no longer slave to that sin. Now, the first man Adam died, and we are the first man Adam. We are the seed of the first man Adam, both spiritually and physically. So he came to be a substitute for us world, for us seed of Adam. This substitution was needed because sin is not imputed where there is no law. The first man Adam did not have the knowledge of the law, and so therefore sin couldn't be imputed on him. So that means the last Adam had to be like the first man Adam without being the seed of the first man Adam, without being subject to the same things as the first man Adam was subject to this sin, to this devil, to this serpent, to this Satan. And so we know that God is not creating new things. He ended creation on the 6th day, and he entered into his rest on the 7th day. So this last Adam, it was the Word that was made flesh, and that Word was God. It's very clear that on John 1 verse 1. So Hebrews 2:14 clarifies this for us, that since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, and that is the devil. Now, to help you kind of grasp this a little bit better, this revelation I had is when God put all these scriptures before me, and I saw this even better. Let me take you back to creation, and there's no better verse other than Colossians 1:16 for this, where it says, "For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him." Now, who is this him? It is Christ that all things were created through. Christ was already the Lord of creation. Creation was done in the beginning, not after the fall, in the beginning. All things were created through him and for him. Christ was already the Lord of creation that all things were created through. And what is fascinating about this is that us mankind, according to Ephesians 1:4, we were chosen in him before the foundation of the world, before the foundation of our realm of existence. We were chosen in him to be holy and to be without blame before him in love. And so when we went astray, when we transgress, misled by this serpent, by this Lucifer spirit behind the serpent, we were not what we were chosen to be. God, when he did that, he chose us on all those that he had created, on everything that he had created in Christ. He chose us, specifically mankind, to be holy and to be without blame in him and love. And so when we went astray, we were separated from the calling that us, mankind, we had in him. We were no longer what we were supposed to be. And that's why actually God in the beginning had actually in his image and also in his likeness and the likeness of holy God. And when we are separated, we were no longer like that. That image was compromised. That likeness was tarnished. We were no longer what God intended us to be. What his expected end was for us, mankind. So this Lord of creation, that all things were created through, had to partake the same things as us, mankind. He had to humble himself and just be like us, mankind, which is flesh and blood, so that he may take away this power that gives the serpent authority over us. Because that was basically a hindrance. This authority that the serpent had over us, mankind, it was a hindrance between us and our God. For God to directly deal with us, the head. God, our God is a God of a covenant. If he's going to deal with anyone, he's going to deal with anyone looking at that person in the head. And that's how we are as well, mankind. It's not something that is unknown. That's how we deal with each other. We look at each other in the head. We all have heads. So when you talk to someone, you look at them. That's where their identity is at, on their head. Our God is a sovereign God. That just means he's self-governing. And since all things were created in him and for him, he's self-governing with everything that is in him. Anything that is out of him, then it will miss that. But really missing that, if you were meant to be in him, it's kind of not clear what that is, right? We don't really know what that is. We are given an image of what it could be when God turns his back on you, when you're separated from him. We're told that is death. But really, as mankind, death still eludes us. But that being said, going back to this, our God is a sovereign God. And that means he's self-governing. And when he's self-governing on the premise of who he is. There is no outer power, greater power than our God, that is directing him on how to be, on when to be, on how to do things. No, our God is sovereign. And that means he is self-governing, and he is self-governing on the premise of who he is. And our God is love. Love is a fulfillment of the law. And we're also told our God is faithful. Our God is righteous. Our God is good. And that means he cannot impute sin where there is no knowledge of the law. Because he is a just God. He cannot do that. The first man, Adam, was ignorant of that. And so us mankind, we are ignorant of that law. Christ had to come and reveal it to us on the cross. Before that, we were ignorant of it. And God couldn't impute sin on mankind. He is a just God, and that is an attribute. Justice is an attribute of love, by the way. And also God couldn't just get rid of the head. Get rid of this master, get rid of this sin, get rid of this Satan, this devil, this Satan. He couldn't do that. Because God is faithful. God cannot lie. He's the one who established, who ordained the covenant. The covenant, by the way, is governed by the law of God. And that's why it has all these laws, all these rules that governs it. One of them, we just read about it on the previous video. Know ye not that to whom you yield yourself as servants to obey, you are a servant to the one you obey. That's why divorce is sinful. You are subject to the one you have yielded yourself as a servant to obey. So Christ had to be a substitution for the one who did not have the knowledge to get rid of this hate, to get rid of this thing that was between us, mankind, and our God, that was causing the separation, because death came through the sin. That was the causality of the separation between us and our God. Did Adam disobeyed? Yes, at the direction of this hate. And that's what Adam yielded himself to. And that's what Adam did not know, to be honest with you. He did not have an understanding that he was going to be in bondage throughout his lifetime to the sin. He did not understand that. It is something that he saw afterwards. It's not clear that he even knew that if Eve ate the fruit, she was going to die. It seemed like the way, that's just personally my opinion, just let me be honest on that. To me, it just seems like when he looked at that, he saw Eve talking to a snake about the fruit. He thought, well, it's me who's going to die. God talked to me about me dying. It was not clear that he knew what it meant for Eve to eat the fruit. But it seemed like he knew right afterwards when Eve had eaten the fruit and she died. Because you don't eat the fruit and wait for God to come and kill you. No. You eat the fruit, you are separated from your God. And that's what happened with Eve. And so Adam followed the same footsteps to be with his bride. And so we're told on Galatians 3 verse 13 that Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law. He vindicated us. He cleared that very thing that keeps us in bondage, subject to this sin. We have to keep on paying that price of being servants, of being slaves. We submitted ourselves, and therefore, that's why when you're in a covenant with the wrong person, it seems like it's just an endless a roller coaster of insanity, cycle of insanity, because you are in a relationship that you really don't want to, but you thought this person was all these things, right? You thought what you were going to, be a part of was something else. You had totally different ideas, but that's a reality of our fallen state now. That's why our relationships are broken. That's why we're liars, we're deceivers, because we're like our father, the devil. But Christ redeemed us from the very thing that bound us to that body. I love Romans 6:6 better because it's clear here. It says we need to know that our ex-husband, right, our ex-master, our old hate was crucified with Christ so that the covenant of sin may be abolished, may be annulled, so that us, mankind, we should no longer be slaves to sin. What rule of the law did Christ utilize to do this? Heads, love your bodies by giving yourselves for it. You see, the first man, Adam, did not know this. In him, instead, what he did was to die with his body. No, Christ came and died for the body. You see, the covenant triggers down. Romans 13 verse 1 is very clear that there is no higher power than of our God. So when it comes to a covenant, it transcends down all the way to the lowest, to the least, to the bottom. So it's going to start with the head, and that head that yields itself to that head, then it is the body of that head, and that it is like a chain That's how it works. The moment you understand the covenant, you will know how did Christ remove the sin on the cross. There are rules that governs the covenant, and Christ utilized one of them. So thank you so much for joining me. Stay tuned for the next video where I will be addressing the third question there on why did Christ remove the sin of the world.